The first sound is no cicadas. It is the soft crack of a twig beneath a bare heel and the low, careful breath of a boy who does not want the earth to hear him leave. Dawn slides slowly over the hills of Attica. A thin light, cold at first, then sharp as if the sky has been drawn across a whetstone. The shapes of the olive trees stand like patient old men in the gray, their leaves whispering as the breeze slips between them. The air tastes of dust and olives left to rot after last year's press, a bitter scent that clings to the back of the throat. On a pale dirt track, a boy walks alone. His feet are bare, his sole is already hardened to stone and thorn. He carries a small bundle, tied with a strip of rope, light enough that he can hold it in one hand, but heavy enough that he feels it in his chest. There is little inside, a piece of bread, a scrap of cloth, the last kindness his family could spare. Behind him lies a home with a roof of clay and reed, a house no stronger than the wind that presses against it each winter. Behind him lie the slow voices of his mother and father, whispering after he left, afraid their words might break him if they spoke them too loudly. Ahead of him lies the city, Athens, its marble temples rising out of the mist like the backs of pale giants. Even from this distance, the light clings to them as if the gods themselves are beginning to wake. The boy does not stop to look back. He does not dare. Each step carries him away from the small fields of olives and thin soil, and toward a place where the stone streets will burn in the noon sun. The stillness of the hills lies behind him like a forgotten dream, but ahead there is work, and work means bread. Hunger has a way of shaping a child's shoulders. Duty bends the spine. It draws lines in the face long before the years do. Already, there are shadows beneath his eyes, as if he has stared too long at things no boy should see. The potter's quarter waits for him. He has never stood close to those furnaces, but he has heard their roar from far away, like lions held in cages made of clay. The red dust they throw into the air settles on everything, coating the ground like a second skin, sticking to hair and sweat. Soon it will coat him too. He wonders, as he walks, if the statues he has seen from the hills, cold white faces staring down from the Acropolis, I can feel pity. Do gods carved from stone see boys like him? Or do they look on without care, thinking all lives are equal under the weight of the same sky? The city grows louder with each step. The first sounds come thin and far away, the slow grind of a cart's wooden wheels, a donkey's bray, the bark of a trader still clearing sleep from his voice. Then the air thickens with voices, 100, then 1,000, a low and endless murmur that rises like the sea. Now the walls of Athens come into sight, and the gates gape wide to swallow him whole. For a moment he stops. He can feel the stones beneath his feet, still cool at night. And he knows that when he crosses this threshold, something in him will not return. The hills will still be there, but the boy who walked them will be left at their edge. He steps forward. Inside the walls, the city is alive. The air smells of sweat and bread, fish and wet clay. Smoke curls from low chimneys and dust drifts from the sandals of those who hurry past him without a glance. Everywhere there is movement, hands carrying baskets, faces set with purpose, eyes that never stop watching. He is only 12, but he understands already. In this place of warriors and philosophers, a single misstep can break a life before it has begun. By the time the sun has climbed fully into the sky, its light turning the marble to fire, the boy has vanished into the labyrinth. One more shadow among thousands, unseen. And above him, beyond the red dust and the white walls, Athens begins another day, never knowing the weight it has just placed upon his small shoulders. In the crowd, a bell rings and the sound stretches outward like a ripple on water, pulling him forward toward the potter's kilns, toward the heat that waits. The city has claimed him now, and the gods, silent as stone, watch without blinking. Somewhere ahead, in a workshop filled with fire and red clay, his first day will begin. Somewhere ahead, his childhood will end. And so the boy walks on. The first thing is the sound. It begins low, like the murmur of a restless sea, and then swells into a tide that rolls across the open square. The Agora breathes. It pulls in the weight of bodies and voices, and exhales heat, dust, and hunger. Here the air is thick. It clings to the skin, heavy with the sourness of fish left too long in the sun, with the sting of sweat, and the sweetness of figs split open on the stall boards. It never sleeps, this place. Everywhere the wind lifts scraps of cloth, makes them flicker like small, desperate flags. Everywhere, the ground trembles beneath the shuffle of sandals and the grinding wheels of carts. Marble pillars watch from the edges, but they are only a frame for the life below. Stalls lean against one another like tired men, figs piled soft and glistening in the heat, pots chipped and worn thin from use, oil in clay jars that catch the light like trapped fire. Nothing stays still for long. Hands reach, coins clink, and the murmur never ends. In the center of this great tangle of trade, a widow stands behind a rough table of wood. Her bread is set out in rows, small, round, plain loaves, each one the color of dust, each baked before dawn while the city still slept. They are not luxury. They are surviving. Her hands tell her story. The skin is strong but cracked, fingers knotted and red from years of kneading and cutting. Her arms are thin, but sure as she works the knife through the bread for those who can afford a copper coin. She does not speak. Words are wasted here. She listens instead. She hears the soldiers first, their low voices thick with anger at pay. Withheld, their shields leaning like tired dogs against their legs. She hears a merchant laughing, telling again how a storm carried his ship safely to harbor while another man sank. And near the fountain, a boy recites lines taught to him by a philosopher, his voice rising, breaking, as he tries to make the words sound wise. She keeps her head low. Athens may look like marble to those on the hill, but down here it is held, up by shoulders like hers. Every crumb she sells is a fight. Every day is an act of endurance. The heat eases as the morning becomes noon. The stones beneath her bare feet are warm now, dust curling around her ankles with every step she takes. Her children are waiting for her in the thin shade beside a wall where the city forgets to look. She counts the coins she has earned. It is not enough, but it will have to be. The bell strikes then. Bronze, clear, and hard as judgment. The sound spreads out in a single long wave, and for a heartbeat, everything stills. The voices close like a fist. A faint wind pushes through the stalls, carrying with it the smell of the sea. It should feel cool, but it only tastes of salt. It brings no comfort. She wraps unsold bread in coarse linen. They are lighter than they were this morning, but too many remain. Her shawl is thin, but she draws it tighter around her shoulders, as if to hold her together against the wind. Then she begins the long walk home. Her shadow stretches out in front of her on the stones, longer than she is, narrow and fragile. It looks like a road she does not choose, but must follow. In this city there is no other way, no place to stop, no place to rest, only to endure. Behind her, the Agora breathes again. The voices rise, the trade begins anew, and the widow walks on, carrying with her the small weight of bread, and the greater weight of another day survived. Far above, marble temples glow white in the sun, but the gods carved there do not look down. They remain still, cold, and silent. And somewhere in the crowded streets ahead, the boy from the hills, his hands already red with clay, is walking home as she walks. Two lives that will pass like shadows and never meet, yet together they hold up the city that does not see them. They are the ground on which Athens stands. And tomorrow, when the bell strikes again, they will return. In the dimness of the sculptor's workshop, there's a sound like a heartbeat, slow and steady, metal striking stone. It echoes against the Walls as if the room itself were alive, a hollow chest holding its breath. Each blow releases a flurry of pale shards, chips of marble scattering across the floor like broken teeth. The air is heavy here. It tastes of stone ground into dust, sharp on the tongue, thick in the throat. Even the light seems weary, sifting in thin, tired strands through the cracks in the clay walls. The smell of sweat lingers like a second skin, mixed with the faint scent of damp plaster and oil. Bent over his work, the sculptor moves as though the weight of all the years has sunk into his shoulders. His hands are large, scarred, their skin hardened by decades of labor, and yet when they hold the chisel, they become something else. Careful, almost tender, as though they fear to wound the silent stone. He does not speak. The stone listens. There are ghosts in his mind, faces he has never seen with his own eyes and yet knows more intimately than his own reflection. Athena, Apollo, the solemn curve of a god's mouth, the long lines of strength and calm he has chased across 1,000 blocks of marble. He has imagined them so often that sometimes, in the dark before sleep, they look back at him and he wonders, if they came down from the high places where men say they dwell, would they recognize themselves in the shapes he makes, or would they laugh, not cruelly, but with pity for the smallness of his hands? Outside, the city is loud. The shouts of traders, the clatter of hooves over stone, the faint metallic rattle of shields carried to drill. But here, inside this room, the noise falls away. Time becomes slow. The world becomes small. In the corner, a boy sits on the floor. His task is humble. He grinds the pigment that will later paint the statues, blue for the folds of a robe, red for a lip, black for the deep gaze of an eye. His fingertips are stained, his clothes streaked with color. He does not speak either. There is no need. The conversation is in the rhythm of hammer and chisel, in the dust that hangs like fog between them. As the day drags on, the sculptor's arm grows heavy, but he does not stop. One more blow, one more breath. The stone yields slowly, revealing what was hidden inside. From a block that once had no shape, a goddess begins to appear, the curve of a cheek, the shadow beneath a brow, beginning lips that seem to hold a secret. Outside, the sun begins its long descent. Light slips into the workshop in a thin, gold blade, cutting across the room. It finds the unfinished face of the goddess, and for a moment, it is as if she breathes. Her features soften in the glow, and her empty eyes seem to turn toward him, alive. The sculptor freezes. The hammer rests in his hand, and he stares. There is a sound in his chest, not of tools, but of memory, of longing. For an instant he is a boy again, standing on the hill outside the city, looking up at statues that seem to hold all the answers. And then the light fades, the spell breaks. The workshop is stone again, dust again. The sculptor lowers his head, and with a long, tired breath, he lifts the chisel once more. The work must go on. Somewhere far beyond the walls of this small room, Athens roars and sings and fights in praise. But in here, the sound of the city has been beaten into silence. All that remains is the quiet struggle of a man trying to rest. Something eternal from a block of marble before his hands become too weak to hold the tools. The boy in the corner looks up, his eyes tracing the half-born face in the stone. For a moment, he forgets the color beneath his fingernails, the ache in his arms. And in that gaze, young, still unbroken, is the beginning of a dream that may outlive them both. When the chisel strikes again, its ring folds into the deepening dusk. The day ends as it began, stone, breath, silence. And tomorrow, when the sun finds the crack in the wall, the work will begin again, as if nothing has changed, and yet everything has. Somewhere in that stone, the goddess waits. Somewhere in the city, life moves toward her. And the sculptor, his hands trembling only slightly now, has one more night to imagine the face he has not yet found. A cry splits the heat, not from a man, but from the wheel of a wooden cart as it groans under its burden, echoing over the cracked plain. At the edge of the city, where Athens spills into dust and olive groves, the land itself seems tired. Pale earth stretches away, its skin broken and dry, cracked like the hands of those who press their weight into it every day of their lives. Oxen move in slow circles, their hides streaked with flies, their hooves sinking into the light soil as they pull the simple wooden plows. The air shakes with the hum of cicadas, a hard, endless sound, and the sun bears down so fiercely that even the thin shadows retreat. Folding into the ground to escape. In one of these fields stands a man. His tunic clings to him, darkened by sweat that leaves a salt crust on the edges as it dries. He pauses, straightening his back, and for a moment, the sky tilts above him in a dizzying blur of blue. His breath comes in ragged gasps, and when he lifts his head, the Acropolis rises faintly in the distance, its white stones bright as bone, its columns like the ribs of a god. He has seen the city, its temples, its statues, its painted walls, and he knows it's all far from him. The gods, carved in perfect stone, do not step down from their pedestals to guide the hand that sows barley. No feast or oration ever finds its way to these furrows. But still, when the evening bells drift on the wind from far away, he feels that old pull, the need to bow his head, to hope that some unseen watcher has not turned away completely. He bends once more, gripping the rough, worn handle of the plow. The ox snorts, its ribs showing as it strains against the weight. Together they move, one slow, unbroken line cut into the stubborn earth. Each furrow is a mark, a small defiance against the hunger that always waits at the edges of the field. Around him, the olive trees whisper in the dry breeze. Their silver-green leaves shimmer like a ghost of water, but there is no water, only the sound. Far above, a hawk turns slow circles, watching with patient eyes, its shadow flickering across the land like a passing curse. He does not look up. He has learned to ignore the sky. His world is here, in the rough soil, in the ache of his spine, in the creak of the plow as it cuts deeper. Wealth and glory are for men standing in marble colonnades. For him, survival is his only coin. A crust of coarse bread, a fistful of lentils, a sip of fine wine when work is done, yet there is a kind of stubborn pride in it too. The lines he leaves behind, straight, and even will remain long after his hands are too weak to hold the plow. This field will carry his mark, just as the city bears the marks of those who built it. He wonders, as the day begins to bleed into evening, if the earth remembers those who press themselves into it, if it keeps the shape of their bones after they are gone. The sun slips lower, and the heat softens, turning the hills the color of hammered bronze. The cicadas slow. The hawk vanishes. The air smells faintly of dry leaves as the breeze comes down from the hills. At last, he stops. The ox stands still beside him, its sides heaving, and together they listen to the faint sound of the city bells, small, distant, ringing through the haze like the call of something both near and unreachable. He leans on the plow and lets his head hang forward. For a moment, there is nothing, only breath, only dust, only the long shadow of his body stretching over the cut lines of earth. Then he takes the handle again, one more step, one more furrow, one more day carved into the soil. When the sun finally slips beneath the edge of the hills, and the first thin star pricks the violet sky, the field is quiet. The man's back is bent into the shape of a bow, drawn by years, by need, by the weight of living. It is a shape the land has made, and the land will keep. In the distance, the city glows, white stone lit by the last light, its temples reaching high, untouched by the dirt below. But here, on this forgotten edge, the only light is the pale shimmer of the sky, and the slow, unbroken steps of a man who will rise again tomorrow to do the same. And far away, beyond these fields, beyond the olive trees and barley, the city's heartbeat waits. ready to pull him back when the bells call again. A low cry splits the night, not from a bird, not from the wind, but from a wooden hull as it shifts against the dark water. The sound echoes once, twice, and is swallowed by the sea dot in the narrow body of a trireme. Men bend forward and back in unbroken rhythm, their bodies rising and folding like a single living thing. The torches fasten to the beams above them, throw long, trembling shapes on their backs, and the sweat on their shoulders glints like hammered bronze. The smell here is thick, salt crusting on lips, tar and pitch bleeding from the timbers, the musk of bodies pressed close. The oars strike, the water with a heavy beat. A sound older than speech, older than the walls of their city, older, perhaps, than their own fear. It is the beat of leaving, of going where the land cannot hold you. They do not talk. No one would hear even if they did. The only voice is the short, sharp cry of the coxswain and the long wooden groan of the oars as they bite and pull. The men's hands, already raw, clamp the smooth handles tighter. The blisters will come later, and later still they will burst. But for now there is only the pull and the push. Forward. Among them sits one who has never known the sea until this night. A young man, not yet 20, with a scar that cuts over his brow like a pale, crooked thread. He watches the narrow band of sky through the oar-hole beside him. It is all he can see. A strip of black, scattered with stars. Behind that strip, somewhere far behind, the city of Athens is folding itself into darkness, its lamps dimming one by one until the whole of it becomes a faint, distant glow. He does not look back. Looking back is for men who think they can choose to return. The oars never stop. Even the thought of stopping feels dangerous, like dropping a stone into deep water and waiting to hear the splash that never comes. The sea smells sharp, like iron, and tastes bitter when it sprays into his mouth. The torchlight sways, casting quick glimpses of faces, some hard and expressionless, some young and frightened, all wet with sweat. The sound of the oars blends with their breathing, until it is impossible to tell the difference between the two. Somewhere in the dark ahead is another shore. It is a thing they cannot see, but they pull for it anyway. They know well what waits in these waters. Sudden storms that come like an ambush, enemy ships hidden just beyond the horizon. They know the sea swallows men without leaving even a ripple behind, but there is no room for fear. Fear would take the air from their lungs, and air is as precious now as land once was. Above them, the wind stirs. It moves across the open deck, tugs at the sail, fills the canvas with a soft, slow sound like a giant breath. Soon, the oars will be pulled in, and the sea and the wind will carry the ship on their own. But not yet. Not yet. The boy with the scar feels the ache in his arms, a deep burn that starts in his palms and climbs through the tendons of his shoulders. His back throbs, but he pulls again and again and again. The scar over his eyes stings with sweat, and his lips are so dry that when he licks them, he tastes nothing but salt. He has heard stories, all of them told in the square where he once sat as a child, of men who left the land and came back different, their faces darker, their eyes farther away. He has heard of places where the sea breaks itself into white foam on the rocks of another world, a world where the soil is not this soil, where the gods are carved in different shapes. And now he is going there, whether he wishes to or not. The rowers pull, and the oars move like clock hands. The hours pass in that sound. The city disappears. The stars seem closer, bright enough to cut. And all around them, the sea stretches wide and black as if it has no end. When dawn comes, and it will come slow, their arms will be heavy as stone. Their backs will be raw. They will step from this ship with bodies already half broken. But they will step out, and the land that rises from the mist before them will not see farmers. It will not see potters. It will see soldiers. And as the first faint line of silver opens in the east, as the dark begins to lift, the young man with the scar lifts his head, and for one small moment, he lets the oar slide in his hands. Just feel the cold spray of the sea against his skin. The horizon is there, and beyond it, something waits. The ship does not slow. The beat continues forward, always forward, somewhere far ahead. The next shore is already listening for them. In the breathless dark beneath the theater, where the walls are damp and the ceiling low, the air is thick with the smell of paint, sweat, and the faint sweetness of incense drifting down from the altars above. It is close here and warm, the kind of heat that clings to the skin and makes the torchlight blur like a dream. On the stone wall, a row of masks waits in silence. Wood and linen, painted with wide eyes and mouths forever frozen in joy or sorrow. In the half-light they seem alive, as if they are listening, waiting for breath to fill them again. A boy runs down the narrow passage, bare feet slapping against the ground, a torch held high in his thin hand. The flame leaps and shakes with every step, throwing jagged shadows over the rough walls. His heart beats like a drum, keeping time with the muffled sound above. 100 voices gathering, low and restless, like the swell of a sea before a storm. The actors are already here, hiding in this underbelly of stone. Some stand silent with their eyes closed, mumbling words no one can hear. Others sit bent over, pulling straps tight on their sandals, their hands steady even when their faces are pale. For them, these final moments before the horn are a long and lonely climb. One man, older now, pulls the leather tight around his ankle. His fingers tremble only slightly, but he feels it all. Years, hunger, the weight of too many winters. He knows the lines. They are carved into him, deep as the grooves in the stone he has walked over all his life. Still, the moment before. The curtain lifts is always the same, a high, sharp fear, like standing at the very edge of a cliff and feeling the wind push at your back. He lifts his head. For a moment, he closes his eyes. The scent of smoke of oil on wood fills his chest. And in that breath, he remembers why he came here, why he never left. Not for coin, not for the small scraps of fame that vanish when the night ends, but because here, on this stage, their people's stories can live again. Even if only for a heartbeat. Even if tomorrow they are forgotten. The boy with the torch stops. A sound comes, deep and low, a single horn. It cuts through the air, and everything stills. Even the smoke seems to hang without moving. Above, the city holds its breath. The voices fade. The crowd becomes silent. And slowly, the actors reach for their masks. The old man takes one in his hands. Its painted mouth is curved wide in grief, its hollow eyes deep and shadowed. For a moment he studies it, as if he might see himself hidden inside it, as if the wood might speak back to him. Then he raises it to his face. When it covers him, everything else, the hunger, the aches in his bones, the weight of his life, falls away. Together, they begin to climb. Up the narrow steps, their sandals strike stone in a slow, steady rhythm. Each step sounds like a drumbeat, like the pulse of something older than they are. The boy follows, his torch flaring against the walls. The light ahead grows brighter. It blinds them as they reach the summit. And then they are there, stepping into the sun, into the gaze of thousands. The marble tiers rise around them like cliffs, and all at once, the city, its struggles, its pain, is gone, for a single span of time. As the first line is spoken and the masks come to life, they belong to something larger. The story becomes theirs, and their lives become the story. The stage swallows every hunger, every sorrow, and lifts it up so that it belongs to everyone. The boy stands in the wings, torch held high, watching the actors fade into the light. For an instant, the city breathes as one, and the masks begin to speak. Somewhere beyond the walls of the theater, a wind stirs over the hills. The sound of it carries the promise that when this story ends, another waits. Always another. And already, the next act is waiting in the wings. Under the white heat of a late summer sky, the gymnasium trembles with motion. Every breath, every footfall lifts the dust into slow golden clouds, so that the figures moving across the packed earth seem half real, as if the heat itself is shaping them. The air smells of sweat and oil, and of the crushed leaves that have fallen from the olive trees beyond the wall. It clings to the skin, to the voices that echo in this walled space, to the long rhythm of bodies training again and again, until pain becomes silent and endurance becomes its own kind of prayer. In the center, young men wrestle, their limbs locked, muscles stretched like ropes pulled to breaking. They crash to the ground with a dull thud, their faces set not in anger but in fierce stillness, for this is not a game. This is a lesson written on the skin. Around them, boys run the circuit of the yard, bare feet pounding, their shoulders shining. In the sun, the dust clings to their ankles and rises like a curtain behind them, so that the stone pillars of the colonnade beyond blur and flicker, as if the whole place belongs to a dream. In the shadow of one column, a teacher sits cross-legged. A scroll rests across his knees, its ends curled like the edges of dry leaves. His voice, calm but unyielding, carries across the yard. He speaks not of victories, but of discipline, of the shape a life must take if it is worth remembering. He says that strength is not the weight of muscle alone, but the weight of thought, of choosing when to hold, and when to strike, and when to stand still. Some listen as they move, their heads turning, their eyes are bright. These are not always the strongest nor the fastest. Some of them are thin, their arms narrow, their movements awkward, but they lean into every word as if it is water offered on a burning day. The dust thickens. A cry rises from the wrestling pit. One boy pinned, his chest heaving, the other standing. Over him, a hand stretched silently. The pinned boy takes it. There is no shame in the dirt, only in refusing to stand again. The scroll closes with a dry whisper. The boys gather, sweat running in thin streams down their backs, their hands open, their faces solemn in the glow of the falling sun. The teacher tells them one last thing before they return to the dust. Strength is an empty thing, he says. His voice steady, if wisdom does not guide it. A breeze stirs the heavy heat. It carries, faint but sure, the murmur of the city below, donkey hooves on stone, the clatter of pots, the call of merchants. And from somewhere far, a bell tolls, slow and hollow, like a reminder that this moment too will pass. The boys bow their heads, the scroll is lifted and carried away. And as the teacher steps back into shadow, the earth begins to move again beneath bare feet. The dust rises once more, lit gold by the late sun. And in its light they run and grapple, their voices sharp and clear, their small bodies learning how to endure in a world that asks much more than it gives. Above them, the sky grows deep and the light lengthens, and the sound of their effort becomes the only prayer the land can hear. When the last rays touch the pillars and the dust turns to bronze in the fading light, the city waits beyond the walls, calling them forward to another day that will test both strength and wisdom. And from the gates of the gymnasium, their shadows stretch long, as if already reaching toward the next lesson. In the fading hour, as the sun sinks behind the low hills, a stillness settles over the sanctuary like a shroud. The last light bleeds red across the white columns, and the cypress trees stand motionless, their long black shadows stretching across the marble as if the earth itself is holding its breath. Along the narrow paths that wind up from the city, pilgrims come one by one, their steps slow and heavy, as though the climb has been longer than the day. Some lean upon wooden staffs, their knuckles white around the worn handles. Others carry small bundles in their arms, offerings of grain, of honey, of clay figures carefully wrapped in cloth so that nothing of their hope will be spilled before. It's time. The air here is sharp with the scent of pine resin burned to sweet smoke in hidden braziers, and beneath it lingers the faint iron scent of sacrifices long since cooled on the altar. A wind comes down from the hills, moving gently through the trees. and it carries the soft sound of footsteps, of cloth dragging over stone, of whispered prayers half formed before the lips dot inside. The sanctuary is dim, its floor polished smooth. By centuries of bare feet, priests move in silence, their robes brushing softly as they set out bowls of clean water and oil. The light from the high doorway fades behind them until only the glow of the setting sun touches the farthest wall. There, in the half-dark, a figure carved of stone stands unmoving, its face worn smooth by countless hands. The god does not speak, but the hollows where its eyes once were seem to hold the weight of every request that has ever been laid before it. A girl kneels near the base of the statue. Her dress is simple and dust-stained, her hair braided with care, though the long walk has loosened it. In her small hands she holds a clay figure, its form crude, but carried as if it were gold. She presses it to her forehead, her lips moving without sound. Whatever words she speaks, they are meant for one set of ears only. All around her, others kneel. Old men with trembling hands, mothers with thin children folded against their sides, warriors with bandages dark from wounds that will not heal. They come with hopes they cannot carry alone. Their whispers rise and fall like wind in the branches. A sound too soft to be called speech, yet too full to be called silence. Outside, the last threads of daylight fade. The hills sink into shadow and a coolness spreads down from the trees. Priests start lighting torches. One by one, small flames bloom along the walls and the sanctuary changes. Stone becomes gold. The darkness becomes deep and alive, moving. With every flicker of fire, the people bow their heads and the murmurs do not stop. The sound of their voices grows softer as the night thickens, but it does not disappear. Even when the great doors close, even when the moon is the only light upon the stones outside, the voices spill through the cracks like a thin, unbroken stream. For here, beneath these cypress trees, there are still those who believe. They believe that the gods, though silent, are listening. That a gift laid down with trembling hands may yet be seen. That in a world ruled by storms and hunger and war, there is a place where the weak may kneel and be known. And so the night deepens around. The sanctuary. The torches burn low, their smoke curling upward like unspoken prayers. Beyond the doors, the city sleeps. But in this hollow on the hill, the flame and the murmuring continue, a rhythm that has never stopped. Soon, before the dawn returns, other voices will come. New footsteps will climb the path, and the old ones will leave with slower steps, their hands empty, their hearts heavy or light, it is hard to say. But always, the columns will stand, and the trees will keep watch, and the god of stone will wait for the next one who dares to ask. And in this way, while the world below fights and hungers and forgets, the hill remembers. It remembers what it is to kneel. It remembers what it is to hope. Far away, a dog barks, and from the sanctuary's walls, a single torch flickers and leans, casting long shadows down the path where someone else is already beginning the climb. Smoke rises from the low roofs like threads of tired breath, thin and slow, as if the very air is weary of this place. The mountains stand dark and watchful in the distance, their jagged edges holding the last of the day's light. Between them and the fields lies the small village, pressed close to the earth, built of stone and mud as if the land itself has tried to give refuge to those who cling to it. The walls are rough beneath the hand, crumbled in places where rain has eaten away the edges. There are no high towers here, no white columns gleaming in the sun. Only low doors, crooked windows, and roofs that sag beneath the weight of years. In the narrow paths between these houses, children run with bare feet, their laughter cutting sharp through the evening air. It is a bright sound, a sound that belongs to the young alone, but even their joy is thin, made brittle by hunger and the cold that will come. Near the well, an old woman sits cross-legged, her back curved like a bow long unstrung. The spindle, turns in her hands, turns and turns as if it has been turning forever. Her face does not lift, but she listens. She always listens to the goats on the hills, to the wind that slips between the houses, to the sound of life that goes on around her, whether she speaks or not. From the slopes above the village, a shepherd comes down with the slow patience of stones. Goats cluster before him, their bells giving soft, irregular notes. Dust clings to his cloak, to the lines of his tired face. That cloak has been patched so many times that no part of it is new. He carries a stick polished smooth by his hand, and with it the rhythm of another day ends. There is no marble in this village, no stage, no painted masks, no learning. Only the small world of field and sky. But within this narrow life, they know hunger as keen as a blade. They know the sound of a door closing when grief enters a house. They know how a single dry season can break a man's back more surely than any enemy's sword. The sun sinks low. The wind cools, and doors begin to open. The smoke thickens as the families gather, each house holding its own circle of light. Inside, they sit on low stools around rough bowls. Lentils, a piece of coarse bread, a swallow of milk. It is not a feast, but it is enough to keep the day from ending in silence. Hands pass bread without words. The bowls scrape clean. A child yawns, a woman reaches to smooth his hair. Outside, the sky deepens, and the first stars begin to prick holes in the dark. From above, the village looks small, a scatter of lights caught in a wide black sea. But in those lights is everything, all the hope and loss, all the fear and the stubbornness of life that keeps rising again each morning. The night comes down hard and clear, settling over the mud walls, over the sleeping goats, over the last. Threads of smoke curling from the roofs. Tomorrow will be just like today. And yet, as one lamp after another goes out, a single thought holds steady, that in the far cities men may forget such places, but here in the shadow of the mountains, life still clings to the earth, quiet, unseen, and unbroken. Somewhere in the darkness, a dog begins to bark. The echo runs into the hills as if to remind the night that the village, small as it is, has not fallen silent yet. And above them, the stars wait for dawn. Night falls as if poured from the heavens. A slow dark tide spilling over the roof and stone. The last gold of the sun bleeds out, and the city exhales, its long-held breath drifting into the hush of lamps being lit. One by one, they bloom across the streets like fragile flowers, their flames trembling in the faint wind. In courtyards, in doorways, under the long shadow of the colonnades, their glow sways, soft and small against the weight of the night. The streets are narrow now, drawn tight between the houses. Stone holds the heat of the day, but gives it away. In slow sighs, the sound of sandals comes, measured, steady, a patrol of guards. Shields dull in the lamplight, eyes scanning faces that flicker in and out of shadow. They pass dice clicking on the ground, men crouched low in the darkness. They pass a drunk, leaning into the wall, singing a song nobody listens to. They pass a child curled up against the cold stone, his small body lost in rags, sleeping, as though the earth itself has taken him in. For the city does not sleep. It only changes its skin. The noise of day becomes the murmuring of night, and all that hides in brightness steps forward when the dark has thickened. Near the harbor, the torches sway in the sea wind, casting their light in broken pieces over the nets that lie like tangled hair on the ground. Men sit there, silent now, hands raw, fingers quick despite the ache. Salt has crusted on their arms, and fatigue hangs heavy in their shoulders. They patch and tie, while the smell of tar clings to the air, mixed with the sharp scent of seaweed drying on the stones. Somewhere close by, figs rot sweet in an abandoned basket, their skins split like overripe fruit. Above them, the hill rises like a pale ghost, and upon it the Acropolis gleams. Its marble is bright even in the dark, a pale bone of something ancient, something that will outlast all the men who walk below it. Owls perch in the olive trees. Their wings cut the air without a sound, their calls slow, mournful, answering each other as if in a secret language older than this city, older than the temples themselves. Dot in the deepest hour of the night, when the moon is high and even the dice fall silent, a man walks alone. He walks without torch or companion, his cloak drawn close around him. The streets bend and turn, but he does not falter. These stones have known his feet since childhood. The city may be a maze to strangers, but to him it is a single long memory. His step is steady, but his head tilts once to the sky. Above him, the stars are so sharp that they seem near enough to touch. And for a moment, a breath's span only, he feels them watching him. Not with kindness, not with cruelty, but with that same strange distance that belongs to the gods. A still, endless watching that asks nothing and offers nothing in return. He reaches his door at last. The wood has been smoothed by hands that came long before his own. He presses his palm against it and feels the cold of the night begin to slip away. Behind him the city murmurs, a low hum, as if all its countless lives breathed together in the dark. When the door closes, it is like a curtain falling. The lamps and the dice, the song of the drunk, the nets by the harbor, all of it becomes faint, like something seen once in a dream. Inside, there's only silence, a small flame, and the weight of the stars still burning far above. The night stretches on, and beyond the walls, Athens does not sleep. It waits. It always waits. And somewhere beyond this same night, beyond these streets, another step is already beginning, one that will carry the city to a dawn that does not yet know its name.